Hello, St. Anne Parish, and welcome to this week's Quick Things, which is primarily a conversation with Monsignor Joe Hirsch, a priest of our diocese who is director of the orphanage that our diocese sponsors outside Lima, Peru. So I hope you'll stick around for that conversation. But first, a few important announcements. I am here near our altar of remembrance and our Book of the Dead. We had our commemoration of the faithful departed, the members of our parish especially, who died this past year, at our liturgies this past weekend. I'm including a link to that Mass in our Quick Things email. So if you want to see the beginning of Mass is that commemoration, so you could watch that if you want. Also, throughout the month of November, people are invited to write the names of deceased family members and friends in the Book of the Dead, and we'll pray for them in the intercessions at each Mass, and also to bring in photos of family members and friends who you want to post here at the altar of remembrance. In terms of remembrance, I'd ask you to remember, to continue to remember in your prayer our neighbors, friends at St. Paul Parish in Mosinee and St. Michael and Resurrection Parish here in Wausau. As you may know, Father Don Moret, the pastor of St. Paul's, died over the weekend, so that parish is now without a pastor. And of course, Father Mark Pierce was removed from ministry. He was the pastor of Resurrection in St. Michael, so they are without a pastor as well. We pray for Father Don's eternal rest. We pray for Father Mark, but also pray for those parishes during this time of transition. Hard to know when new pastors might be found or where they would be found for these parishes on such short notice. So we just pray for their continued steadfastness, really, I think, during this time of grieving and of transition. A few announcements pertaining to parish things. We have members of the parish will be serving the community meal on Thursday, November 10th. Those meals are served at St. Matthew Parish. So we need folks to help prepare the meal, which begins around 3:30, or preparation begins around 3:30, and then also people to provide desserts. There's further information in the Quick Things email with links to get more information, so please be attentive to that. Our Thanksgiving basket project, something we've done for over 50 years. I'm not sure what the count is exactly in terms of how many meals, but a great project. Over 100 of these, well, they're not really baskets, they're boxes of stuff that would provide for a Thanksgiving meal, but lots of other household items as well. The list of items that are needed for us to contribute is in a newsletter parishioners will hopefully be receiving in the mail this week. They'll be in the worship aid and in the Quick Things email. So please be attentive to that list. Bring those items throughout the month of November. The deadline is indicated there. It's several weeks away, but we want to collect those items throughout the month. So please be attentive to that. Also be attentive to the letter that quite a few parishioners actually received regarding the Inspired by the Spirit campaign. We're doing our fall follow-up. We kind of let the campaign go for the summer months. People are in and out. But we hope to really kind of get on track with that again and complete the campaign. We're about 10% away from our goal. And hopefully with some generous contributions from a good number of parishioners, we'll easily be able to exceed our goal for the Inspired by the Spirit campaign. A letter explaining the campaign, pledge forms, return envelopes were all sent to parishioners who have not yet contributed to the campaign. So give some attention to that, please. And then also our visitation ministry. So this will be groups of 2, maybe 3 parishioners who will visit homebound parishioners. That will be happening in December. We'll have an orientation meeting for those visitation ministers on November 17th at 6:30. If you'd be interested in being part of that group, and I hope you might think about that, I think it's going to be a rather enjoyable effort and lots of people have expressed some real optimism about being part of that. So if you'd be interested in either if you want to learn more about it, check in with me, and then or join us for that meeting on November 17th at 6:30. And finally, kind of an odd thing. So there's a TV Mass that the Diocese of La Crosse sponsors. It's on Channel 12. I think it's available in other, maybe some cable outlets as well, and also online. It's offered every Sunday at Channel 12 at 6:30 a.m., which is not probably the best time. And it's filmed in parishes around the diocese, often at the Diocesan Center. I struggle with it because it's recorded well in advance. You have to squeeze Mass into like 25 minutes. But I was contacted by Luke, the guy in the diocese who coordinates these, and he said, Father Tom, I met Luke when he was here with the bishop for our dedication mass. He said, would you be willing to record 4 TV masses? It would be a great way to show off your beautiful new church. Well, I couldn't resist that. So we will be recording 4 TV masses coming up on Thursday, November 10th. Now, these are masses that will air late in November and into December. So what happens is beginning at 3 o'clock and then for about 2 hours, or maybe 3 hours, we record a half-hour mass, then we regroup and record another half-hour mass, and we do 4 of them. And so to do that, we need obviously a few ministers, but really we need our people to sit near the front of the church so it looks like there are people at Mass. It gives the people at home the impression that this is like a parish Mass and there are people in the pews. And hopefully you would be there praying, but we're praying for like the 3rd Sunday of Advent. So it's kind of, it messes with your head, but it is very important for the folks who are at home, who can't get to Mass and who appreciate this offering. Obviously, we would prefer, if at all possible, that they would be able to somehow connect with our live stream, which is live and which is a full Mass, and it's not manufactured weeks in advance. But be that as it may, this is a good thing that we offer as a diocese. And what I'm asking is that you might come and join us for 1 or 2 or 3 or maybe even all 4 of those recordings on Thursday, November 10th. In the Quick Things email, there's a sign up so we can have some idea of how many people we have. We don't really need more. We need about 20, so we don't need more than that, and that'll give us a good group of people to look like we have a nice assembly in church. If you can be part of that, think of it as a charitable offering for those homebound parishioners who really benefit from the TV Mass. Again, the sign up link is in the Quick Things email for those masses on Thursday, November 10th. You don't need to watch them when they're on. Oh, by the way, one thing you would have, it's not the same Mass, so there will be different prayers, somewhat different music, different homily for each of these, so you wouldn't be sitting through the same Mass 4 times. It will be 4 different Masses. Again, hope a few of you might be able to give some time to that. Thank you, and now let's get to the conversation with Father Joe Hirsch. Well, I am happy to welcome to St. Anne's Monsignor Joe Hirsch. When was the last time you were probably at St. Anne's, Joe?
Maybe 5 years, something
well, more
like
than that, because I've been here 5 years. And
then
you
it's
haven't
more
been
than
here
that.
since I was. But so he is one of our. I've always said that we're losing all the characters among the priests in our diocese, that we don't have any characters left. Well, Monsignor Hirsch is one of our characters. Yeah. And we'll get to why I would define him as a character with one anecdote. But
I'm interested in that one, too.
He is the director is your title?
Director.
Director of Casa Hogar de Juan Pablo II.
Yes.
In Lima, Peru. Right. Is it actually in Lima?
It's in Lurin. Lurin is
Lima.
part of the metropolis.
Okay. And so we want to talk about Casa Hogar and the important work that Monsignor Hirsch and others are doing there. First of all, Joe, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself, the Joe Hirsch story in this much?
Born in Medford, lived in Stetsonville.
Medford, really?
Yeah. Went to school in Dorchester.
Seriously?
Yes.
I thought you were down from that south area.
And my dad worked at Colby Factory.
Seriously?
So that was till 13. At age 13, my dad had a change of jobs, and then we moved to Sparta, Wisconsin.
Okay.
That put us in the Diocese of La Crosse. Otherwise, I would not be in this diocese. So ended up...
You'd have 7 parishes up north somewhere.
That's right. But I went to high school seminary for a couple of years. Then I thought, I don't know, I just want to have a girlfriend. So I went back to high school, was an exchange student down to Ecuador. And that's where the Spanish side of my life started coming. Okay. And then went to college at UWL La Crosse. And it was at age 25 that I was thinking about priesthood again. And but I had a life-changing experience over at St. Anthony Retreat Center with Father Ben Adams. And that's where really becoming Catholic, or staying Catholic, was a decision I made. And then went into seminary at age 27.
Okay.
Came out at 31 And then I've been at the Cathedral, Wisconsin Rapids, and lots of different places.
Were you pastor at the North American Martyrs Parish?
No.
that we used to
Where
have?
is that?
Well, isn't it in like north of Rudolph or somewhere in that area?
I was
down there?
I was at Wisconsin Rapids. I was pastor of Altdorf.
Altdorf. Okay. What was
And-
the parish in Altdorf?
It was St. Joseph,
Okay.
and but 100 people.
Yeah.
But then I helped out with Hmong ministry here at St. Anne's
Okay.
every month. Had Spanish ministry, and helped at a couple other parishes.
Okay. So one thing we have in common is I was associate pastor at the Cathedral Parish in La Crosse, but one thing I didn't do, which is I think what makes you a character. Tell us what you used to do, Father Hirsch, when people wanted to like see La Crosse or see the inside of the cathedral.
Well, the inside of cathedral, I took people into the bowels of the cathedral, down below, and I took kids up to the top. Since then, I think the insurance company cut that off.
Into the spire of the cathedral.
The spire of the
Yeah.
cathedral. I took many, many people. It's 142 steps up to the top, ladder steps and others, and we take them up to the top. It's an absolute delight.
I bet it
If
would
they
be.
give me permission, I'd do it tomorrow.
Well, you don't ask permission, you just do it. You find out a
I
way to
need
get in there. Yeah, you
I
break
need the
into
key.
Monsignor Gillis's office and steal the key.
That's right.
Well, I thought of this because I was in La Crosse a few weeks ago for our fall clergy meeting and was walking around downtown at night and saw the spire is now lit up at night. It's really extraordinary. And thought of you climbing up there with whoever you were dragging along.
That's right.
So tell me how you became connected with Casa Hogar.
The first connection was 47 years ago. I was backpacking in 1975, and my brother and I, and there were two university women, we all took separate paths, but the young women said, well, we are going to go to visit a priest in Lima, Peru, named Joe Walieski. So I said, well, would you ask him if on my way, when I make my swing back from Bolivia, I'd like to see him for a couple days. So I made my trip, and when I came back, the girls were gone, and I was alone, and I get to Lima. I looked up Father, and I stayed there for a couple days, but it was so interesting. I spent a month with him. But, little did I know that someday I would be his successor in his future assignment.
Correct. That's just
This just teaches you, and I keep this in mind when kids come down for an adventure at Casa. I say, you don't know where this is going to lead you.
right.
And then I tell my story.
Sure. When was the mission or the orphanage established?
It was established in 1986. In 1985, Pope John Paul made a visit to that area where Father had his parish.
Okay.
And that's where they
So
met.
that's where you were visiting, was at the parish that he had.
I was
there.
at the parish.
Yeah.
But then once he started the orphanage in 1986, he started that. Then it was in the early 90s about where he met with a number of us priests, and he said, I would like to train people. We have this diocesan mission. It's just a beautiful spot. There's so much that we could teach people. People think that all Casa Hogar is, give me $1, and that's it. But he said, there's things we should learn from them. So he said, what I'd really like to do is bring people from the U.S. down, come and visit Casa for a period of time, learn mission spirituality, which is really servant leadership. And then go back to the diocese and be missionaries within the diocese. And we got about 3-4 of us priests together, and we went down in 96. A couple people made a few trips before that, but we specifically said we are doing reverse mission. We are doing Mission 96. Then we did it in 98, we did it in 2001, we did it in 2004, and at that point I was too busy, I had to give it up. And so I passed it off to several other priests, and we averaged sometimes, I don't even know, about 150 people come down in a year. And they come in families, they come in as long-term volunteers for a couple of months, they come in groups of about 15, And so this has been going on for
Sure,
many years.
sure.
So it really has quite an influence. But
Sure.
it started with that idea of reverse mission.
Right, right. Talk about the orphanage a bit and just the idea of an orphanage. We kind of think of orphanages as something that's like Dickensian, like something from the past. So why an orphanage? What does that mean in the contemporary context?
The reality is many of these children come from environments that are hugely dysfunctional. And in every case, there's something happened. During the age of when Father Joe started, it was really during a time of terrorism. And there were a lot of parents murdered. And so they were just these children had no parents. But then there's also other children who have some kind of something. It might be a grandmother, might be an aunt, in a few cases it's a dad. Otherwise, it's we have parents in prison. We have parents who are drug addicts, alcoholics, people who are in just dire straits. And we have some parents too that are just so poor they only earn a couple dollars a day. And so a mom will come to us and say, look, I have these two kids. I only make about $3, $4 a day selling candy on a bus. Can you help me? Because my kids will never go to school. And so the kids that come to us, they're missing years of school. They have emotional scars. They have the father scars, the mother scars. There's just so many wounds. And we try to take those kids, give them an environment of not just education, but a moral formation, spiritual formation, and just teaching them that there's people that love you.
How does a child become part of Casa Hogar?
We have a social worker. She's been there since the beginning.
Wow.
She is a saint. And she is like 70.
What's her name?
Alcira.
Okay.
Alcira. Okay. And she's into the homes all over. She knows every kid that has gone through our house. And so many people will contact her and say, Alcira, I have this situation. Can you help me with it? Or if people come to me and they say, Father, what do I do? I say, get in touch with Alcira. And so during the year, she processes people, and then she works with our psychologist and in preparing them. We can't accept everybody because we could have 1,000 kids.
And how many do we have there?
64.
Okay.
But we could have 1,000. But not only that, we're trying to do a program where we're forming the kids. And we have about 1/6 of our house of kids with more psychiatric issues. But I can't have more than that, otherwise it'll cancel out the program. And so we have a number of kids who have some real specific needs, and other kids who it just comes from great poverty or dangerous situations.
Sure. And the children do live in families at the orphanage.
They live in families.
Explain that a little bit.
It's a more expensive kind of orphanage because you go to many orphanages and it's a warehouse model.
Well, we think of the musical Annie or whatever. But
where you have 30 kids in a dorm.
Yeah.
And in that kind of house, it's hard to give much of an education because you're basically caretaking. Father Joe Walieski, he watched a movie when he was a kid called Boys Town. And that is from Omaha, Nebraska. And it's that model of orphanage is what he always dreamed about doing. When Father Sebastian took over for him, Father Sebastian and Ambershowski went to Boys Town, were trained in the program.
Okay.
And then they came back and they translated the whole program into Spanish. Okay. And so I don't know of any other house that has a model quite like ours.
Mm-hmm. And just it works with, there's a house, like a house parents in each group of kids or whatever, right?
Right. And you can see up there, like in one corner it's a family of girls, another family of girls up there. Downstairs it's 4 families of boys. And there's 8 children in each family. We get a married couple. There are other orphanages that use this model, but they're usually foreign from other countries because they cost more money.
Sure.
And
but so, much more human, much more.
I think it's more
relational, right?
Formational. We're able to bring the kids from here to here. Mm-hmm. And the other thing that makes us a little distinct is orphanages are notorious that when they get 18, the door is locked and they're out. And what kid is ready at 18? None.
Increasingly, that's true, right?
And so our kids too, when they leave our house, If they cannot go back home, then we try to set something else up. But we also offer like a technical degree. And if they can keep their grades up, we'll get them through a technical degree. We have a number of them living at our house. They live in our volunteer house with me.
Okay.
I live right next door, but we have breakfast every day. We talk over a lot of themes. And then they also have formational help from others. We have a person guiding all the education. And if we can get these kids to a technical degree, then they can fly.
Yeah, yeah. What do you think is the biggest misconception people have of orphanages in general or of Casa Hogar that you found?
Some of the problem that you have in orphanages is a lack of supervision. And with that lack of supervision, there's a lot of bad things can happen. And some of that stuff is true. And I see it in other orphanages. But I know that for us as an American house, I can't work that way because I have to live in two worlds. I have to be able to offer the safest environment possible. And that's why this is the only way I can do it,
Sure.
being an American.
Sure. How does the diocese support Casa Hogar?
They supply us with most of what we need.
Okay.
Because for me as an American, I go to somebody down in Peru and I say, would you give me a handout? They look at this face and they say, Father, I think you've got sources that we don't even think of. Yeah. So I'll give my money to the other orphanage. And so it's very difficult to get funds. I get funds from Peru, such as the store a big store like, it's like a Walmart, and they'll give us anything that's expiring. And then we use it.
Sure.
And so we're able to get those kinds of donations. But to pay the salaries, which is my major expense, I have to go to La Crosse. Okay. So I come home once a month, or I come home October and May. Yeah. So the kids, when I left, they said, Father, why do you leave so long? Don't go so long.
You come home for a month, twice a year.
Right.
You don't come home once a month.
I'll get it right.
Right.
So I look at the kids and I say, it's because you're expensive. You're expensive. I have to go home. I have to. Plus, I feel a debt. This is my diocese, and I feel a debt to be able to come back and get into the schools, get into the parishes, and do what Father Joe wanted us to do. Mm-hmm. Be able to teach about the mission, and so I like to do that.
And of course, you're there. You mentioned Father Sebastian, who's now the pastor here in Wausau of St. Matthew's. Is it feasible for us to, and Father Sebastian obviously isn't there anymore, is it feasible for us to continue to have a priest on site looking ahead?
That's, I think, because of the canonization process, yes.
Okay.
I think it's feasible, but see, another aspect is I was vocation director for 10 years in the diocese. I'm still vocation director down there.
Yeah.
Because everything that I do with the kids, those kids, plus all the volunteers that come down, is missionary. Yeah. Now, you look up in this picture, there's Father Amir. He's an Indian priest. He had to leave the country for a year to go back to India. He says, I have nothing to do in India. He said, but I tell you what, I love Spanish ministry. I don't know Spanish. But he said, you let me live in Peru for a year. So we give him very reduced salary. He's got to learn Spanish. And when he comes back to the U.S., he'll be helping us. Also, when I was in Bolivia, I worked with a priest down there from Ghana. That priest next year is coming to the Diocese of La Crosse, and he's fully bilingual. So as long as I'm replacing myself.
Sure. Well, and Father Sebastian really came as a vocation from Father Walieski from Peru. And you mentioned Bolivia. I mean, two of the things that are really so important to our diocesan story are our missions, the Casa Hogar in Peru and Santa Cruz, the parish in Bolivia, which we are no longer directly associated with, but we established it. We created that community there. So those are really two important parts of our legacy. You mentioned the canonization of Father Joe Walieski. We have to talk about that.
Okay.
So what is your role in that, and what's happening in that process?
The bishop started that process in 2013. And there's people that did the interviews in the U.S. He asked me to do the interviews in South America. So I went to the jungle, did some interviews there, went to Bolivia, did interviews there, and did interviews in Lima. So that was my part.
Okay.
For me, I loved it because there are so many of these stories that nobody's ever heard. And I knew Father Joe.
Right.
And so it just embellishes my experience of him. I'm preaching about it all the time. Mm-hmm. And I tell the kids stories and things like that. So right now, the process is basically complete as much as we can do. Now we're waiting for miracles. And he is a servant of God.
Right.
Once we get a couple of miracles, he will be venerable. Now people say, have you seen miracles? Yeah, I've seen things I cannot explain. But Rome is real picky.
In terms of what a miracle is, or what
It has to be
qualifies.
fully documented. It has to be this and this and this and this. So I haven't satisfied their requisites, but
Well, just to be a little devil's advocate about it, I guess that's an odd phrase to use in terms of canonizing a saint.
Right.
Why is it important that he be recognized in this way? We know of him. We know his great attributes and his saintliness.
that's why for me, if this never goes any further, I'm fully satisfied because I've enjoyed working with him and just passing on the stories.
Sure. And I think that's, among the local people, among the people in our diocese, in some ways he's already canonized
Right.
or beatified because we recognize his holiness and his significant contributions. Is there anything else the parish should know that you'd want us to know about the orphanage?
I just want to say thank you to the people who make our mission possible. I can't do it alone. And sometimes people say, but that's just a bunch of little kids over in a foreign country. No, what we're doing is we are working with kids. We are working with their families. We are working with the graduates. We are working with the volunteers who come down. We're working in parishes down there. And then I come back and we do teaching in the diocese. My assistant, Noelle, she too is going to be throughout the diocese educating. The more that we can do vocationally for people, that's going to enrich the diocese. But on the financial side, look, anything you can do to help us, we deeply appreciate. And it keeps the mission going. But I really feel that what Father Joe did was inspired by God. And the mission that we do is enriching our diocese, and it makes us a more generous, a more loving, and a more Catholic people.
Well, great. And thank you. And God bless you on your continued efforts there. And certainly we need to pray more for you and the children and all the good work that's happening there. So
Thank you.
Thank you, Monsignor Joe Hirsch. And St. Anne, pray for us.